The gunshot echoed through the narrow canyon just as the first snowflakes began to fall, and Zara Palmer knew she had maybe 30 seconds before Frank Dawson's men found her hiding place behind the overturned wagon. She pressed her back against the splintered wood, her breath coming in short gasps that created small clouds in the suddenly frigid December air. The snow fell harder now, thick flakes that caught in her dark hair and melted against her flushed cheeks. She could hear boots crunching through the scrub brush, getting closer, and her fingers fumbled uselessly at the empty pistol in her hands. She had fired her last shot 5 minutes ago. "Come on out, Miss Palmer," a voice called through the increasing snowfall. "Mr. Dawson just wants to talk to you about your father's debts. No need to make this harder than it has to be." Zara closed her eyes and thought of her father, buried just 2 weeks ago in the Santa Fe cemetery. The fever had taken him so quickly, she barely had time to process his death before Dawson's men showed up at the boarding house where she worked, demanding payment for gambling debts she never knew existed. $3,000. She made $12 a month scrubbing floors and washing linens. The math was impossible, hopeless. She had run. It seemed like the only option at the time. Now, trapped in this canyon 15 miles outside Santa Fe with 3 armed men hunting her through a sudden blizzard, running seemed like the worst decision she had ever made. "Last chance," the voice called again, much closer now. Zara stepped out from behind the wagon, her hands raised, the useless pistol dangling from one finger. The snow swirled around her, thick enough now that she could barely see the 3 men standing 20 feet away. Her legs shook, whether from cold or fear she could not tell. "Please," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, I do not have the money. I did not even know about the debt. My father never told me. Please just give me time. I can work. I can pay it back eventually." The lead man, a stocky brute named Carson, laughed. "Eventually? Mr. Dawson does not do eventually, sweetheart. He wants his money now or he takes payment another way." His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Please," Zara begged, sinking to her knees in the snow that was already starting to accumulate on the rocky ground. "Please have mercy. I will do anything. I will work for him, clean his house, anything. Just please do not hurt me." The 3 men moved closer, forming a semicircle around her. Carson reached for her arm. The shot came from somewhere up in the rocks, a sharp crack that was almost lost in the wind. Carson jerked backward, a red bloom spreading across his shoulder. The other 2 men spun around, drawing their weapons, but 2 more shots rang out in quick succession. One man dropped his gun with a yelp, clutching his hand. The other dove for cover behind a boulder. The lady asked for mercy, a voice called down from the rocks above. "Seems to me like the gentlemanly thing would be to grant it." Zara looked up through the falling snow and saw a figure standing on an outcropping about 30 feet above them. He wore a long duster coat and a wide-brimmed hat, and he held a rifle with the casual confidence of someone who knew exactly how to use it. "This is none of your business," Carson snarled, pressing his hand against his bleeding shoulder. "This is between the girl and Mr. Dawson." "Well, I am making it my business," the man said, climbing down from the rocks with surprising agility. As he got closer, Zara could see he was younger than she had first thought, maybe 26 or 27, with sharp features and dark eyes that assessed the situation with quick intelligence. "You boys are going to get on your horses and ride back to Santa Fe, and you are going to tell Mr. Dawson that Miss Palmer is under my protection now." "And who the hell are you?" Carson demanded. "Name is Isaac Northwood," the man said, reaching Zara's side and offering her his hand. "And you are going to kill you," Carson said, reaching for his gun with his good hand. Isaac's rifle was up and aimed before Carson's fingers touched the grip. I would not recommend that. I have already shot you once today. I would prefer not to make it twice, but I will if you make me." The three men exchanged glances. The snow was falling so heavily now that visibility was dropping by the minute. Carson cursed under his breath and then nodded to his companions. "This is not over. Dawson will hear about this." "I am counting on it," Isaac said calmly. They watched as the three men limped and stumbled back to their horses and rode off into the blizzard. Isaac kept his rifle raised until they disappeared completely into the white curtain of snow. Then he turned to Zara, who was still kneeling in the snow, shaking violently. "You are going to freeze to death if we do not get you somewhere warm," he said, his voice gentler now. He shrugged out of his duster and wrapped it around her shoulders. The coat was warm from his body heat and smelled like leather and sage smoke. "Can you stand?" Zara nodded and tried to get to her feet, but her legs would not cooperate. Isaac caught her before she fell and lifted her easily in his arms. "My horse is just over there," he said. "There is a line shack about 2 miles south of here. We can wait out the worst of the storm there." "Why are you helping me?" Zara managed to ask through chattering teeth. Isaac looked down at her and something in his expression softened. "Because you asked for mercy and I figured you deserved at least that much. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "my mother raised me to be a gentleman. She would haunt me for the rest of my days if I left a lady in distress." His horse was a sturdy bay gelding who stood patiently as Isaac somehow managed to mount up while holding Zara. He settled her in front of him, keeping one arm wrapped securely around her waist while he guided the horse with the other. The snow was coming down so thick now that Zara could barely see 5 feet in front of them, but Isaac seemed to know exactly where he was going. The ride to the line shack took longer than 2 miles should have taken, but eventually a small structure materialized out of the blizzard. It was barely more than 4 walls and a roof, but it had a door and a small covered area for the horse. Isaac dismounted and helped Zara down, then quickly saw to his horse before ushering her inside. The shack was dark and cold, but at least it was out of the wind. Isaac found a kerosene lamp and got it lit, casting a warm glow over the sparse interior. There was a small stove, a rough wooden bunk built into one wall and not much else. "Not exactly a palace," Isaac said, already working to get a fire started in the stove, "but it will keep us alive until this storm passes." Zara sank down onto the bunk, still wrapped in his coat. She watched as he efficiently built a fire, his movements quick and practiced. Within minutes, warmth was beginning to spread through the small space. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You saved my life." Isaac turned to look at her, and in the lamplight she could see him properly for the first time. He had a strong jaw and high cheekbones, with dark hair that fell across his forehead. There was a scar along his left cheek, thin and white, that only added to his rugged appearance. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, dark brown and surprisingly kind despite the hardness she sensed beneath. "You are welcome," he said simply. He rummaged in a pack he had brought in from his saddle and produced a tin cup and a small flask. "Whiskey. It will warm you up." Zara accepted the cup gratefully and took a small sip. The liquor burned going down but settled warm in her stomach. "I do not even know how I ended up here. This morning I was in Santa Fe trying to figure out how to pay off my father's debts. Then those men came to the boarding house and said if I did not come with them, they would hurt the other girls who worked there. So I went with them, but then when we got outside of town, I realized they were not taking me to see Mr. Dawson at all. They were taking me somewhere else. So I fought and ran, and somehow ended up in that canyon with an empty gun and no idea what to do next." "Frank Dawson," Isaac said, his voice hard. "I know of him. He is a piece of work, that one. runs most of the gambling and a good portion of the less savory businesses in Santa Fe. How much did your father owe him? $3,000, Zara said miserably. I do not know how he could have lost so much. He was a good man, a clerk at the surveyor's office. But after my mother died 2 years ago, he started drinking and I guess gambling too. I had no idea until after he passed. Isaac whistled low. That is a lot of money, I know. Zara felt tears burning in her eyes but refused to let them fall. I make $12 a month at the boarding house. It would take me 20 years to pay that back, and that is if I never spent a penny on food or rent. Dawson knows that, Isaac said quietly. He never expected you to pay him back with money. Zara felt her stomach turn. I know. That man, Carson, he made it very clear what kind of payment Dawson had in mind. Isaac's jaw tightened. Well, he is not going to get it. I meant what I said out there. You are under my protection now. But why? Zara asked again. You do not know me. And now you have made an enemy of Frank Dawson. Why would you do that for a stranger? Isaac was quiet for a long moment, staring into the stove where the fire was now burning steadily. About 3 years ago, he finally said, I was working a ranch up north of here, near Taos. There was a girl there, Maria, who worked in the kitchen. She was sweet and kind, and one of the ranch hands took a liking to her. Except his liking was not the respectful kind. She told him no repeatedly, but he would not take no for an answer. One night I heard her screaming from the barn. I ran over and found him forcing himself on her. He paused, his hands clenched into fists. I pulled him off her and we fought. He was bigger than me, meaner, but I was angrier. I beat him pretty badly. The ranch owner fired us both, said he did not want troublemakers. I found other work, but Maria had nowhere to go. Her family had disowned her for working at the ranch in the first place. Last I heard, she ended up in a brothel in Albuquerque. Zara's heart ached at the story. I am sorry. I swore to myself that day that if I ever saw another woman in trouble, I would not look away. I would not let another Maria happen if I could prevent it. So when I heard you begging for mercy back there in the canyon, well, I could not just ride on by. You are a good man, Isaac Northwood, Zara said softly. He glanced at her with a wry smile. I have my moments. Mostly I am just a ranch hand trying to make an honest living. Speaking of which, I should probably explain that I was on my way to take up a new position at the Double R Ranch when I heard the gunshots and decided to investigate. The Double R, is that near Santa Fe? About 30 miles southwest. It is a big operation, maybe the biggest in the territory. They are always looking for good hands. The pay is decent and the owner, Richard Randolph, is fair. I worked for him a few years back, and when he sent word he needed men again, I jumped at the chance. Isaac pulled off his hat and ran his fingers through his hair. Of course, that was before I declared war on Frank Dawson. Might complicate things a bit. I am so sorry, Zara said miserably. You should have just left me there. Now I have ruined your life too. Hey, Isaac said firmly, moving to sit beside her on the bunk. You have not ruined anything. Dawson is a bully and a criminal, and someone needs to stand up to him. Might as well be me. But $3,000, Zara whispered. And you just met me. Why would you risk so much? Isaac looked at her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. Honestly, I do not know. There is just something about you. When I saw you on your knees in the snow, begging for mercy, and I saw the way those men were looking at you, I just knew I could not walk away. Call it instinct or fate or just plain foolishness, but here we are. The snow continued to fall outside, the wind howling around the small shack. Inside, the fire crackled warmly, and Zara felt the first real sense of safety she had experienced in days. She looked at Isaac, this stranger who had risked his life for her, and felt something shift in her chest. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Well, first we survive this blizzard," Isaac said practically. "Then we head to the Double R. Richard Randolph is a powerful man in this territory, and he has no love for the likes of Frank Dawson. If anyone can help us figure out a way to deal with this situation, it is him." "Us," Zara repeated softly. "You keep saying us." "That is because we are in this together now," Isaac said simply. "Whether you like it or not, you are stuck with me." Despite everything, Zara felt a smile tug at her lips. "I think I can live with that." They spent the rest of the evening talking quietly as the storm raged outside. Isaac told her about his life, growing up on a small farm in Kansas before his parents died of cholera when he was 16. He had drifted west, working whatever jobs he could find, learning to cowboy, learning to shoot, learning to survive. He spoke of the places he had been and the things he had seen, painting vivid pictures of vast prairies and towering mountains and endless skies. Zara told him about her own life, the daughter of a clerk and a seamstress, growing up in Santa Fe. Her childhood had been modest but happy until her mother took sick with tuberculosis. The illness had been slow and cruel, taking nearly a year to finally claim her. After that, her father had never been quite the same, the light gone from his eyes. Zara had taken the job at the boarding house to help make ends meet, working from dawn until well past dusk scrubbing and cleaning and trying not to think about how her life had become so small. "It sounds lonely," Isaac observed. "It was," Zara admitted. "I had friends, but no one close. The other girls at the boarding house were nice enough, but we were all so tired all the time that we barely spoke beyond what was necessary. And after my mother died, my father and we just sort of existed around each other rather than with each other. I think he was in too much pain to really see me anymore." "I understand that," Isaac said quietly. "Grief can make ghosts of us." The temperature dropped as night fell, and even with the fire burning, the small shack grew cold. Isaac gave Zara the only blanket, insisting he would be fine, but she could see him shivering as he sat on the floor near the stove. "This is ridiculous," she finally said. "That bunk is big enough for two if we are careful about it. We will both freeze if we try to tough it out separately." Isaac hesitated. "Miss Palmer, I do not want you to think that I have any improper intentions." "I do not think that," Zara said honestly. "I think you are a gentleman who is trying to do the right thing. But the right thing right now is to share this blanket before we both turn into ice sculptures." After a moment, Isaac nodded and joined her on the bunk. They lay carefully side by side, the blanket pulled over them both, maintaining a respectful distance. But as the night wore on and the temperature continued to drop, they gradually moved closer together, drawn by the basic human need for warmth. By the time Zara fell asleep, her back was pressed against Isaac's chest, his arm draped carefully over her waist, their shared breath creating small clouds in the frigid air. She woke once in the deep hours of the night and found herself turned toward him, her face pressed against his shoulder. His arm had tightened around her, and she could feel the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. It should have felt strange, intimate, even frightening given everything she had been through. Instead, it felt safe. It felt right. When morning came, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. Isaac woke first and carefully disentangled himself from Zara, trying not to disturb her. He got the fire going again and melted snow for water, and by the time Zara opened her eyes, he had a tin cup of weak coffee waiting for her. "Good morning," he said with a smile that did strange things to her heart. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," Zara admitted, sitting up and accepting the coffee gratefully. "Thank you." "We should probably head out soon," Isaac said. "The snow stopped, and if we leave now, we can make it to the Double R by nightfall." They packed up quickly, Isaac making sure the fire was fully extinguished before they left. Outside, the world was blanketed in white, the sun glinting off the snow with almost blinding brightness. Isaac's horse snorted and stamped, clearly ready to move after being cooped up all night. The ride to the Double R Ranch took most of the day. They moved slowly, picking their way carefully through the snow-covered terrain. Isaac kept Zara tucked in front of him again, his arm secure around her waist, and despite the cold and the uncertainty of what lay ahead, she found herself relaxing into his embrace. They talked more as they rode, their conversation flowing easily despite their short acquaintance. Isaac made her laugh with stories of ranch mishaps and stubborn cattle, and Zara found herself telling him things she had never told anyone, dreams and fears and hopes she had kept locked inside for so long. "What did you want to be?" Isaac asked at one point. "Before everything happened with your mother and father, what were your dreams?" Zara was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I wanted to be a teacher," she finally said. "I love children and I love books. I thought maybe I could combine the two, help shape young minds. But teachers' college costs money, and after my mother got sick, well, there was never any money for dreams." "That is not a dream that has to die," Isaac said thoughtfully. "Teachers are always needed out here. If you wanted to, you could probably apprentice with an established teacher, learn the trade that way." "Maybe," Zara said, but she did not let herself hope. Hope felt dangerous. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they finally crested a hill and Isaac pointed down into the valley below. "There it is, the Double R," Zara gasped. The ranch spread out below them like a small town unto itself. There was a large main house, a bunkhouse, several barns, corrals full of horses and cattle, and numerous other outbuildings she could not immediately identify. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys, and even from this distance, she could see people moving about their evening tasks. "It is enormous," she breathed. "Richard Randolph runs about 2,000 head of cattle and probably 500 horses," Isaac explained. "He employs maybe 40 or 50 hands, plus all the house staff and cooks and whatnot. It is one of the most successful ranches in the territory." They rode down the hill and into the ranch compound. Several men stopped to watch their approach, curiosity evident on their weathered faces. Isaac guided his horse directly to the main house, a sprawling adobe structure with a wide porch and large windows that glowed with warm light. Before they could dismount, the front door opened, and a man stepped out onto the porch. He was in his mid-50s, Zara guessed, with silver threading through his dark hair and a commanding presence that spoke of authority long held. "Isaac Northwood," the man said, his voice a pleasant baritone. "I was expecting you yesterday. Began to wonder if you had changed your mind about my offer." "Sorry, Mr. Randolph," Isaac said, dismounting and then helping Zara down. "Ran into a bit of trouble on the way. This is Miss Zara Palmer. She needs help, and I was hoping you might be able to provide it." Richard Randolph's sharp eyes took in Zara's disheveled appearance and the way Isaac hovered protectively near her. "Why do not you both come inside?" he said. "You look half frozen and entirely exhausted. We can talk over supper." The interior of the house was warm and beautifully appointed, with thick rugs on the floor and artwork on the walls. A fire blazed in a massive stone fireplace, and the smell of cooking meat and fresh bread made Zara's stomach rumble. She could not remember the last time she had eaten. Richard led them into a dining room where a long table was already set for the evening meal. A woman appeared from what must have been the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 40, with kind eyes and graying blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Margaret, we have guests," Richard said. This is Isaac Northwood, who I told you about, and Miss Zara Palmer. They have had a difficult journey. Could you set 2 more places?" "Of course," Margaret said warmly. "Miss Palmer, you look frozen through. Why do not you come with me, and we will get you warmed up properly before supper?" Zara glanced at Isaac, who nodded encouragingly. She followed Margaret out of the dining room and up a wide staircase to the 2nd floor. Margaret led her to a bedroom with a large bed covered in a colorful quilt and windows that looked out over the ranch compound. "There is a washroom just through there," Margaret said, pointing to a door. "Take your time, clean up, warm up. I will bring you some fresh clothes. You and I look to be about the same size, and the Lord knows I have more dresses than I need." "Thank you," Zara said, her voice thick with emotion at this stranger's kindness. "You are very generous." "Nonsense," Margaret said briskly. "Any friend of Isaac's is welcome here. That young man is one of the good ones." After Margaret left, Zara washed the grime of travel from her face and hands, marveling at the luxury of running water and clean towels. Margaret returned with a simple but beautiful dark green dress and fresh undergarments, which Zara gratefully changed into. She tried to do something with her hair, but the best she could manage was to brush out the tangles and leave it hanging loose down her back. When she returned downstairs, she found Isaac and Richard sitting in the dining room, deep in conversation that stopped when she entered. Isaac stood immediately, his eyes widening as he took in her cleaned-up appearance. "You look lovely," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "Thank you." Margaret was very kind. They sat down to supper, and while they ate, Isaac explained the situation to Richard and Margaret. He told them about Frank Dawson, about the debt, about finding Zara in the canyon being threatened by Dawson's men. Richard listened intently, his expression growing darker as the story unfolded. "Frank Dawson is a snake," Richard said when Isaac finished. "He has been trying to get his hooks into legitimate businesses in Santa Fe for years, using intimidation and violence to force people to sell to him or work with him. The territorial governor knows about him, but has not been able to gather enough evidence to do anything official." "So what can we do?" Isaac asked. Richard was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming on the table. "The debt is legal, even if Dawson's methods are not. As long as he can prove that Zara's father owed him money, he has a legal claim to pursue repayment." Zara's heart sank. "So I have to pay him?" "Not necessarily," Richard said. "There are ways to satisfy a debt besides money. If someone were to pay it on your behalf, for instance, or if you were to enter into a contract that provided regular payments over time." "I have no one to pay it for me," Zara said quietly. "And any payment plan I could afford would take decades." "What if someone hired you?" Margaret spoke up suddenly. "What if you had a job here at the ranch that paid well enough to make regular, substantial payments? Frank Dawson would have to accept that, legally speaking." Richard looked at his wife thoughtfully. "That could work. We do need help with the household accounts and correspondence. My eyesight is not what it used to be, and I have been putting off hiring a secretary for too long. Miss Palmer, you said your father was a clerk. Did he teach you to read and write and figure?" "Yes," Zara said, her heart beginning to beat faster. "He taught me everything he knew. I am good with numbers and my handwriting is neat. Then I would like to offer you a position as my secretary and household manager," Richard said. "The job would pay $40 a month plus room and board. That is more than enough to make significant payments on your debt while still having money left over for yourself." Zara could barely breathe. $40 a month. That is more than I made in 3 months at the boarding house. "You would earn it," Richard assured her. "I have 6 months of correspondence piled up, account books that need reconciling, and a household staff that needs better organization. But if you are willing to work hard, the job is yours." "I do not know what to say," Zara whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Thank you so much." "Do not thank me yet," Richard said with a smile. "Wait until you see the state of my office." That night, Zara lay in the comfortable bed in the room Margaret had given her and stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. 24 hours ago, she had been on her knees in the snow begging for her life. Now she had a job, a safe place to live, and hope for the first time in longer than she could remember. And she had Isaac. She thought about the cowboy who had appeared out of nowhere to save her, who had held her through a freezing night, who had brought her to safety and helped her find a way forward. She barely knew him, and yet she felt drawn to him in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. He had promised she would only know kindness from him, and so far, he had kept that promise in every possible way. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Richard had not been exaggerating about the state of his office. Zara spent long hours sorting through correspondence, reconciling account books, and trying to bring some order to the chaos. It was hard work, but she loved it. Using her mind, being useful, feeling competent, it all combined to give her a sense of purpose she had not felt in years. Isaac had taken up his duties as a ranch hand, working with the cattle and horses. Zara saw him at meals and occasionally in the evenings, but they were both so exhausted from their work that their conversations were brief. Still, every time their eyes met across the dining table, she felt that same flutter in her chest, that same sense of connection. On her 4th day at the ranch, a rider came with a message from Santa Fe. Richard called Zara into his office, his expression grim. "It is from Frank Dawson," he said, handing her the letter. "He is demanding that you return to Santa Fe immediately to discuss the debt, or he will come here to collect you." Zara read the letter, her hands shaking. The words were polite on the surface, but the threat beneath was clear. "What do I do?" she asked. "We respond," Richard said firmly. "We send him a letter explaining that you are now in my employ and that you will be making regular payments on the debt. We make it official and legal so he cannot claim otherwise. Do you think he will accept that?" Richard's expression was skeptical. "Honestly, no. Dawson does not strike me as the type to accept legal solutions when he has intimidation as an option, but it is worth trying." They drafted a response that afternoon, outlining Zara's new position and proposing a payment plan of $100 per month toward the debt. It was a generous offer, more than fair, and legally binding. Richard had his lawyer draw up the papers, and everything was sent to Santa Fe by special courier. The response came 3 days later. Dawson rejected the offer. His letter stated that he required payment in full within 30 days, or he would be forced to pursue other means of satisfying the debt. "He is not going to let this go," Zara said, reading the letter with a sinking heart. "He does not want the money, he wants me." "Then he is going to be disappointed," Isaac said. He had been in the office when the letter arrived and his expression was thunderous. "We will not let him take you." "But what can we do?" Zara asked helplessly. "The law is on his side, the debt is real." "The law is on his side regarding the debt," Richard corrected. "But he has no legal right to take you as payment. Slavery is illegal, even if he is trying to dress it up as something else." "He will find a way," Zara said quietly. "Men like him always do." That night, Zara could not sleep. She paced her room, anxiety gnawing at her. She had been so hopeful, had started to believe that maybe things could work out. Now it seemed like she was right back where she started, trapped with no way out. A soft knock on her door startled her. She opened it to find Isaac standing in the hallway, fully dressed despite the late hour. "I saw your light," he said quietly. "Could not sleep either." Every time I close my eyes, I see Dawson's men, Zara admitted. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you had not been there in that canyon. Isaac stepped into the room, leaving the door open for propriety's sake. I was there, and I am here now. I am not going to let anything happen to you, Zara. I promise you that. You cannot promise that, Zara said, her voice breaking. You are one man. Dawson has dozens working for him. What happens when he gets tired of sending letters and decides to just come take what he wants? Then he will have to go through me, Isaac said firmly, and through Richard, and through every man on this ranch who believes in doing what is right. Zara looked at him, this man who had become so important to her so quickly. Why? She whispered. Why do you care so much? Isaac reached out and gently cupped her face in his hand, his thumb brushing away a tear she had not realized she had shed. Because when I saw you in that canyon, something in me recognized something in you. Because I have spent the last few days watching you work harder than anyone I have ever met, watching you be grateful for kindness, watching you smile despite everything you have been through. Because when I am near you, I feel like maybe I am not just drifting anymore. Like maybe I have found a place I want to stay. Isaac, Zara breathed, her heart pounding. He leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Zara felt the world fall away, felt every fear and worry dissolve in the warmth of his touch. When they finally pulled apart, she was breathless. I should not have done that, Isaac said, though he did not sound particularly sorry. It was not gentlemanly of me. I am glad you did, Zara said honestly. I have been wanting you to for days. Isaac smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Good, because I have been wanting to for days too. They stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other, until propriety finally forced Isaac to step back toward the door. Get some sleep, he said softly. We will figure this out together. I promise. After he left, Zara climbed into bed, and this time when she closed her eyes, she did not see Dawson's men. She saw Isaac smile. She felt his kiss. And for the first time in days, she slept peacefully. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange bubble of normalcy punctuated by underlying tension. Zara continued her work in Richard's office, bringing order to chaos and discovering that she had a real talent for organization and management. Richard praised her work constantly and even gave her a raise to $50 a month, insisting she had earned it. Her relationship with Isaac deepened in quiet, stolen moments. He would find excuses to be near the main house, and she would find reasons to walk out to the corrals. They talked for hours, learning each other's thoughts and dreams and fears. He taught her to ride properly, taking her out on gentle trails around the ranch property. She learned that beneath his tough cowboy exterior, he had a poet's soul, able to describe the landscape and the sky in ways that took her breath away. They were careful, always maintaining propriety, always aware that Margaret and Richard were watching with knowing smiles. But everyone on the ranch could see what was developing between them, and most approved. Isaac was well liked among the ranch hands, and Zara had quickly won over the household staff with her kindness and work ethic. But beneath the happiness, the threat of Frank Dawson loomed. The 30-day deadline he had set was approaching, and everyone knew something was coming. It came on a cold January morning. Zara was working in the office when she heard horses approaching, a lot of them. She looked out the window and felt her blood run cold. At least 15 men rode into the ranch compound, and at their head was a man who could only be Frank Dawson himself. He was perhaps 50 years old, well-dressed in expensive clothes that looked out of place on a working ranch. His face was smooth and pale, his hands soft, the face and hands of a man who had never done an honest day's work in his life. But his eyes were hard and cold, the eyes of a man who took what he wanted and destroyed anyone who stood in his way. Richard appeared on the front porch, and Zara hurried out to stand behind him. She could see Isaac and several other ranch hands moving toward the main house, their hands resting casually on their gun belts. "Mr. Dawson," Richard said, his voice cold and formal, "you are trespassing on private property." "Mr. Randolph," Dawson replied with a smile that did not reach his eyes, "I apologize for the intrusion, but I have come for something that belongs to me." His gaze shifted to Zara, and she felt sick. "Miss Palmer and I have business to conclude." "Miss Palmer is in my employ," Richard said. "Any business you have with her can be conducted through proper legal channels." "I tried proper legal channels," Dawson said, his voice hardening. "I made a generous offer to accept payment over time. You rejected it." "You rejected our offer," Richard corrected. "We offered fair and legal repayment. You demanded payment in full, which you knew was impossible." "The terms of the debt are mine to set," Dawson said. "Now, Miss Palmer, if you would be so kind as to come with me, we can resolve this matter quickly." "She is not going anywhere with you," Isaac said, stepping up onto the porch beside Zara. "You can forget that right now." Dawson's eyes narrowed as he looked at Isaac. "Ah, yes, the heroic cowboy who shot my men. Isaac Northwood, is it not? Tell me, Mr. Northwood, are you prepared to die for this woman?" "If that is what it takes," Isaac said steadily. "How romantic," Dawson said mockingly. "But unfortunately, romance does not pay debts. Miss Palmer, your father owed me $3,000. That is a legally binding debt. If you do not pay it, I can and will have you arrested for theft." "Theft," Zara said, finding her voice. "How is it theft? I did not take anything from you." "Your father took my money and failed to repay it," Dawson said. "Under territorial law, his debts pass to his heirs. That would be you. Failure to pay constitutes theft. I have already spoken to the sheriff in Santa Fe. He is prepared to issue a warrant for your arrest." "Then let him issue it," Richard said. "Miss Palmer will defend herself in court, as is her right, but she will not be going anywhere with you." Dawson's pleasant facade finally cracked, revealing the cruel man beneath. "You are making a mistake, Randolph. I have 15 men here and more in Santa Fe. You might have a lot of ranch hands, but you really want to start a war over some clerk's daughter. If you are threatening violence, then yes, I am prepared for war," Richard said coldly. "The double R has stood for 30 years, and it will stand for 30 more. I do not bend to bullies and thugs, no matter how well dressed they are." The tension in the compound was thick enough to cut. Dawson's men had their hands on their guns, and so did the ranch hands. One wrong move, one hasty word, and people would die. "There has to be another way," Zara said desperately. She could not let people die because of her father's debts. "Please, there must be some way to resolve this." "There is," Dawson said, his eyes gleaming. "You come work for me. Let us say 5 years of service, and I will consider the debt paid." "Service," Isaac said flatly. "You mean you want her to work in one of your brothels?" "I run many legitimate businesses," Dawson said with a shrug. "Miss Palmer would work where I saw fit, but 5 years of her labor would satisfy the debt nicely." "Absolutely not," Isaac said. "I will do it," Zara said quietly. "What?" Isaac spun to look at her. "Zara, no, you cannot." "I cannot let people die because of me," Zara said, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot let you die. If this is what it takes to keep everyone safe, then I will do it." "The hell you will," Isaac said fiercely. He turned to Dawson. "I will pay the debt." Everyone froze. Dawson looked genuinely surprised. "You will pay $3,000. Where would a ranch hand get that kind of money?" I have been saving for 10 years, Isaac said. I have about $1,500 in the bank in Santa Fe. I can get the rest. Give me time and I will get it. Isaac, no, Zara said, grabbing his arm. That is your whole life savings. You cannot give that up for me. Watch me, Isaac said, looking down at her with such intensity that her breath caught. I am not letting you sacrifice yourself. Not for this, not for anything. How touching, Dawson said. But I am afraid $1,500 is not $3,000, Mr. Northwood, and I am not a bank, willing to accept payment plans and promissory notes. What if we could get the full amount? Richard said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. What if we could have $3,000 in your hands within a week? Would you accept that and forgive the debt entirely? Dawson considered this. You would pay it. Why? She is just an employee. Because it is the right thing to do, Richard said simply. And because I can afford it and you are disrupting my ranch. If money is truly what you want, then let us settle this with money. If you can produce $3,000 in cash within 7 days, I will accept it as payment in full, Dawson said. But if you cannot, Miss Palmer comes with me. Agreed, Richard looked at Zara and Isaac, then nodded. Agreed. Dawson smiled coldly. Excellent. 7 days, Mr. Randolph. I will return then to collect either my money or my property. He wheeled his horse around and rode out of the compound, his men following. The moment they were out of sight, Isaac rounded on Richard. I cannot let you pay that much money, he said. It is too much. I will find a way to come up with it myself. You cannot come up with $1,500 in 7 days, Richard said practically. Your money is in a bank in Santa Fe and banks do not move that quickly, but I can have the cash here in 3 days. Why would you do this? Zara asked, still crying. Why would you spend so much money on me? Richard smiled gently. Because Margaret and I never had children of our own, and in the short time you have been here, you have felt like the daughter we always wanted. Because Isaac is a good man who deserves happiness, and anyone can see he has found it with you. And because Frank Dawson represents everything I despise, and I will be damned if I let him win. I will pay you back, Isaac said firmly. Every penny. It might take me years, but I will pay you back. We can discuss that later, Richard said. Right now, I need to send word to my bank in Albuquerque. $3,000 is a lot of cash to have on hand, and I need to make sure they can put it together in time. The next 3 days were agonizing. Richard sent telegrams and riders to Albuquerque, arranging for the money transfer. The ranch hands, having heard what happened, took up a collection among themselves, contributing what they could to help. It was not much, maybe $200 total, but the gesture moved Zara to tears. Isaac was like a caged lion, pacing and restless, clearly hating that he could not fix this himself. Zara tried to reassure him, but she was just as anxious. What if Richard could not get the money in time? What if Dawson changed his mind? What if this was all just a trick? On the 3rd day, a coach arrived from Albuquerque, heavily guarded. Richard met it personally and brought a locked strongbox into his office. When he opened it, Zara saw more money than she had ever seen in her life, stacks of bills bound together. $3,000, Richard said with satisfaction. Right on time, but Isaac was frowning. Dawson gave us 7 days. He is not due back for 4 more days. What if he is planning something? What do you mean? Zara asked. Think about it, Isaac said. Dawson is not stupid. He knows Richard has money. He had to know there was a chance Richard would pay the debt. So what if he is planning to take the money and you? What if he shows up with enough men to overwhelm us and just takes everything? Richard's expression turned grim. He would not dare. That would be open robbery, and even Dawson could not survive that. Could he not? Isaac challenged. Who would testify against him? Us. And if we were all dead, who would be left to tell the story? Zara felt sick. You think he is going to attack the ranch? I think we should be prepared for that possibility, Isaac said. Richard nodded slowly. You may be right. I will send riders to the neighboring ranches, call in some favors. If Dawson wants a fight, we will be ready for him. The next 4 days were spent preparing. Ranch hands checked their weapons and stocked extra ammunition. Richard called in friends from neighboring ranches, tough, experienced men who owed him favors and were happy to repay them. By the time the 7th day arrived, the Double R was practically an armed camp, with maybe 60 men ready to defend it. Dawson arrived exactly when he said he would, this time with at least 30 men. He looked around at the assembled defenders, and his expression turned sour. Planning for war, Mr. Randolph? He asked. Hoping for peace, preparing for war, Richard replied, as any wise man does. Now I have your money. $3,000 as agreed. Let us conclude our business. Show me, Dawson demanded. Richard had the strongbox brought out and opened it. The money was all there, counted and verified. Dawson looked at it with clear disappointment, confirming Isaac's suspicions. He had been hoping to take the money and Zara both. This concludes Miss Palmer's debt, Richard said. You will provide written confirmation of this, signed and witnessed, before you leave this ranch. And if I refuse, then my men will ensure you never leave this ranch at all, Richard said coldly. Make your choice. Dawson glared but nodded. Documents were drawn up, signed, and witnessed by multiple people. The debt was officially discharged. Zara was free. Dawson took his money and rode out, but not before giving Zara one last look that promised this was not over. As soon as he was gone, Zara felt her legs give out. Isaac caught her, holding her tight as she finally let herself cry, great shaking sobs of relief and release. It was over. She was free. She was safe. It is okay, Isaac murmured, holding her close. You are okay. It is all over now. That night there was a celebration at the ranch. The ranch hands and the men from the neighboring ranches ate and drank and told stories, relieved that violence had been avoided. Zara sat next to Isaac, his hand firmly wrapped around hers, and felt like she could finally breathe. Later, after most people had gone to bed, she and Isaac walked together under the stars, the New Mexico sky spread out above them in all its glory. I still cannot believe it is over, Zara said softly. I keep expecting to wake up and find this was all a dream. It is real, Isaac assured her. You are free. You can do anything you want now. You could even leave the ranch if you wanted to go somewhere else. Zara stopped walking and turned to face him. Is that what you want? For me to leave? God, no, Isaac said fervently. I want you to stay. I want you to stay here with me for as long as you will have me. I know it has only been a few weeks, and I know this is probably too fast, but Zara, I am falling in love with you. Hell, I think I have been falling in love with you since I saw you on your knees in the snow, begging for mercy. You are the strongest, bravest, kindest person I have ever met, and I do not want to spend another day of my life without you in it. Zara felt her heart swell so full she thought it might burst. I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. You saved my life, Isaac. You saved me in every way a person can be saved, and I want to stay here with you for as long as you will have me. Isaac pulled her close and kissed her, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. This was a kiss of promise and passion, of two people who had found each other against all odds and refused to let go. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Isaac reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a ring, simple silver with a small turquoise stone. This was my mother's, he said. The only thing I have left of her. I know we have not known each other long, and I know I should probably wait longer to ask this, but life is uncertain, and I have learned not to waste time when you find something worth holding on to. Zara Palmer, will you marry me? Zara looked at the ring, then at Isaac's hopeful, nervous face and felt joy flood through her. Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, Isaac, I will marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. They kissed again under the stars, and Zara thought about how strange life was. A few weeks ago, she had been kneeling in the snow, begging for mercy, certain she was going to die. Now she was engaged to the man she loved, free from debt, with a job she enjoyed and a future full of possibilities. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the ranch. Margaret cried happy tears and Richard beamed like a proud father. The ranch hands all attended, dressed in their Sunday best, and the celebration afterward lasted well into the night. Zara wore a white dress that Margaret had made for her, and Isaac wore a new suit that made him look impossibly handsome. When they exchanged vows, Zara's voice was clear and strong, all traces of the frightened woman from the canyon gone. Richard had a small cabin built for them on the edge of the ranch property, a wedding gift that left them both speechless. It was just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was theirs, the first home either of them had ever truly owned. Their first night as husband and wife was tender and sweet, Isaac treating Zara with a gentleness that made her love him even more. They lay together afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, and talked about their future. I want children, Zara said softly. Someday. Is that something you want too? I want everything with you, Isaac replied, kissing her forehead. Children, a home, a life, all of it. The months that followed were the happiest of Zara's life. She continued working for Richard, now helping to manage not just his accounts, but coordinating with neighboring ranches, and even helping to establish a small school on the property for the children of the ranch workers. Isaac thrived as a ranch hand, his skill and work ethic quickly making him one of Richard's most trusted men. They fell into easy rhythms, working during the day and coming together in the evenings to talk and laugh and love. They discovered shared interests, books and music, and long walks under the stars. They learned each other's moods and habits, the little things that made a marriage work. 8 months after their wedding, Zara discovered she was pregnant. She told Isaac one evening after supper, nervous about how he would react. His face transformed with joy, and he picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests. We are going to have a baby, he kept saying, wonder in his voice. We are going to be parents. The pregnancy was not easy. Zara was sick for the first 3 months, barely able to keep anything down. Margaret hovered over her like a mother hen, making sure she rested and ate and took care of herself. Isaac was worse, treating her like she was made of glass, constantly worrying that she was doing too much. I am pregnant, not dying, Zara finally told him, exasperated but touched by his concern. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine. You are my wife and the mother of my child, Isaac said firmly. I am allowed to worry. In the 7th month of her pregnancy, word reached the ranch that Frank Dawson had been arrested in Santa Fe. Apparently, he had finally overstepped, threatening a territorial judge's family in an attempt to influence a ruling. The judge had him arrested on multiple charges, and with his protection gone, victims started coming forward. By the time the legal process was done, Dawson was facing years in prison. Zara felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had not even realized she was carrying. The man who had tried to destroy her life was facing justice, and she was free to live without fear. Their son was born on a cold February morning, almost exactly a year after Isaac had found Zara in the canyon. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Isaac, pacing outside the cabin, was convinced that he was going to lose her. But when Margaret finally emerged to tell him he had a healthy son and his wife was tired but fine, he burst into the cabin with tears streaming down his face. Zara lay in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up at Isaac and smiled. "Meet your son," she said softly. Isaac took the baby carefully, marveling at how small he was, how perfect. The baby had dark hair like his and Zara's delicate features. As Isaac watched, the baby opened his eyes, revealing the same dark brown as his father's. "What should we name him?" Isaac asked, unable to look away from his son. "I was thinking maybe Thomas," Zara said. "After your father." Isaac felt his throat tighten with emotion. He had told Zara stories about his father, a good man who had worked hard and loved deeply before cholera took him. "Thomas Northwood," he said, testing the name. "I like it. I think my father would have liked it too." They named him Thomas Isaac Northwood, and he was the light of their lives. Richard and Margaret doted on him like the grandparents they had never gotten to be, and the ranch hands all took turns teaching him various skills as he grew. By the time Thomas was 2, he could sit a horse better than most children twice his age, and was already learning his letters from his mother. 2 years after Thomas was born, Zara gave birth to twin girls, Catherine and Sarah. The twins were a handful from the start, identical in appearance but opposite in temperament. Catherine was bold and adventurous, always getting into mischief, while Sarah was quiet and thoughtful, preferring books to outdoor adventures. Their cabin had become too small for their growing family, so Richard helped Isaac build a larger house on the same plot of land. It had 4 bedrooms, a real kitchen, and a front porch where Zara loved to sit in the evenings, watching her children play while Isaac played his harmonica, a skill he had picked up somewhere along the way. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, sick cattle and broken equipment, the endless challenges of ranch life. But through it all, Zara and Isaac faced everything together, their love deepening with each passing year. When Thomas was 8 and the twins were 6, Zara started the school she had always dreamed of. It began small, just the ranch children meeting in a corner of the barn for a few hours each day. But word spread, and soon children from neighboring ranches were riding in for lessons. Richard built a proper schoolhouse, and Zara hired 2 additional teachers to help manage the growing number of students. Isaac had become Richard's foreman, second in command of the entire ranch operation. He was respected by the men and trusted implicitly by Richard, who was now in his late 60s and happy to have someone competent to share the load. Isaac was fair but firm, able to handle disputes and make tough decisions when needed. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Zara back to the canyon where he had first found her. They rode out in the early morning, leaving the children with Margaret and Richard, and stood in the spot where she had knelt in the snow, begging for mercy. "Do you remember what I said to you that day?" Isaac asked, holding her hand. "You said I would only know kindness from you," Zara replied, leaning against his shoulder. "And you kept your promise. Every single day for 10 years you have shown me nothing but kindness and love." "You made it easy," Isaac said, turning to face her and taking both her hands in his. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done. You are my best friend, my partner, the mother of my children, and the love of my life. I cannot imagine existing in a world without you in it." "I love you," Zara said, tears in her eyes. "I love you so much that sometimes I feel like my heart cannot possibly hold it all." They kissed, and it was just as sweet and perfect as their first kiss had been 10 years and a lifetime ago. The years continued to pass, marked by milestones and memories. Thomas grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's sharp mind and kind heart. He took over many of Isaac's duties on the ranch, showing the same natural leadership and work ethic. The twins grew as well, Catherine becoming a skilled horsewoman who could rope and ride as well as any of the ranch hands, while Sarah followed in her mother's footsteps, helping to run the school and showing a real talent for teaching. When Zara was 42 and Isaac was 45, they welcomed a surprise addition to their family, a daughter they named Hope. The name was fitting, Zara thought, a reminder of how hope had sustained them through the darkest times and brought them to this place of joy and contentment. Richard passed away peacefully in his sleep when he was 78, and Margaret followed just 6 months later, as if she could not bear to be parted from him. They left the ranch to Isaac and Zara, recognizing that they had become the son and daughter Richard and Margaret had always wanted. It was an overwhelming responsibility, but also an honor, and they vowed to run the Double R with the same integrity and fairness that Richard had shown. By the time Zara was 50, the ranch was more prosperous than it had ever been. Thomas had married a sweet girl from a neighboring ranch, and they had given Zara and Isaac their first grandchildren, a boy and a girl who were the absolute light of their lives. Catherine had shocked everyone by deciding to become a doctor, studying under a physician in Albuquerque, and then returning to practice on the ranch. Sarah had taken over the school completely, expanding it to include students from as far away as 20 miles. Hope, at 8 years old, was showing signs of inheriting her mother's organizational skills and her father's easy way with people. She spent her days following one or both of her parents around, absorbing everything like a sponge. One evening, as Zara sat on the porch of their house watching the sun set over the ranch, Isaac settled into the rocking chair beside her and took her hand. "You ever think about that day in the canyon?" he asked quietly. "Sometimes," Zara admitted. "It seems like a lifetime ago. Like it happened to different people." "In a way it did," Isaac said thoughtfully. "We were different people then. Younger, scared, uncertain. Now look at us. We have a family, a home, a legacy. We built something real and good out of the worst day of your life." "The worst day and the best day," Zara corrected. "Because yes, I was terrified and certain I was going to die. But then you appeared, and you offered me mercy when I thought none existed. You offered me kindness, and then you offered me love, and then you offered me everything. That day in the canyon was the day my real life began." Isaac brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I was just a cowboy who happened to be in the right place at the right time." "You were my cowboy," Zara said, smiling at him. "And you still are. You always will be." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. From inside the house, they could hear Hope singing to herself, a happy, tuneless melody. Somewhere down by the barn, Thomas was giving orders to the evening crew. The world was peaceful and right. "I have no regrets," Isaac said suddenly. "Not a single one. Every choice I have made since the day I met you has led to this moment right here, and I would not change a thing." "Neither would I," Zara agreed. "Well, maybe I would have convinced my father to stay away from gambling halls. But everything else, all the fear and struggle and pain, it was worth it to end up here with you." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, two people who had found each other in the worst circumstances and built a beautiful life together. The ranch spread out around them, a testament to their hard work and dedication. Their children and grandchildren were healthy and happy, carrying on the legacy of kindness and integrity that Zara and Isaac had worked so hard to establish. Years later, when people asked Zara about her life, about how she had gone from a frightened woman with nothing to one of the most respected ranch owners in the territory. She always told them the same thing. "I was shown mercy when I begged for it," she would say. And that mercy turned into the greatest love story I could have ever imagined. I learned that even in our darkest moments, kindness can find us. And if we are very lucky, that kindness comes in the form of a cowboy who refuses to ride away. Thomas grew up to be as fine a man as his father, eventually taking over the daily operations of the Double R when Isaac decided to slow down. He ran the ranch with the same fairness and integrity his father had shown, and the Northwood name became synonymous with honesty in business dealings throughout New Mexico territory. Catherine did become a doctor, and she ended up marrying another physician she met during her studies. Together, they opened a clinic in Santa Fe that served both wealthy clients and poor patients, with the wealthy subsidizing care for those who could not afford it. It was innovative and controversial, but it saved countless lives. Catherine and her husband had 3 children of their own, all of whom inherited their mother's keen intelligence and dedication to helping others. Sarah married later in life, at 32, to a teacher who came from back east to help with the school. They were perfectly matched, both quiet and bookish, and they expanded the school into a full academy that became known as one of the best educational institutions in the territory. They had one son, a gentle boy who loved music and became a renowned pianist, touring throughout the Southwest. Hope, the surprise baby of the family, grew up to be a force of nature. She had her mother's organizational genius and her father's leadership skills, combined with a fierce determination all her own. When she was 23, she started a business buying and selling horses, and within 10 years, she had operations in 3 territories. She never married, claiming she was too busy for romance, but she showered love and attention on her many nieces and nephews. Isaac and Zara lived to see all their children grown and successful, lived to hold great-grandchildren in their arms and tell them stories of the old days. They grew old together gracefully, their love never dimming even as their bodies slowed and their hair turned white. On a warm spring evening when Zara was 68 and Isaac was 71, they sat together on their porch as they had done countless times before. Isaac had been ill for several weeks, his heart growing weaker, and they both knew his time was coming to an end. "I am not afraid," Isaac said, holding Zara's hand. "I have lived a good life, better than I ever could have imagined. I have loved you every single day, and I have been loved in return. What more could a man ask for?" "Stay with me a little longer," Zara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please, just a little longer." "If I could, I would stay forever," Isaac said gently. "But when my time comes, I will go peacefully, knowing that I lived well and loved deeply. And you need to promise me something." "Anything," Zara said. "Promise me you will keep living," Isaac said firmly. "Not just existing, but really living. Keep running the ranch. Keep being part of our children's and grandchildren's lives. Do not let grief shut you down. Promise me." "I promise," Zara said, though the words felt like they were tearing her heart in two. Isaac passed away 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep with Zara holding his hand. The funeral was enormous, with people coming from all over the territory to pay their respects to a man who had been respected and loved by so many. Zara stood straight and strong through it all, keeping her promise to keep living even as she felt like a part of her had died with him. The months after Isaac's death were the hardest of Zara's life. She woke every morning reaching for him and finding empty space. She went about her days mechanically, fulfilling her duties but feeling hollow inside. Her children and grandchildren rallied around her, making sure she was never alone for long, but nothing could fill the Isaac-shaped hole in her heart. But slowly, gradually, she found her way back to life. She threw herself into the ranch operations, working alongside Thomas to implement new breeding programs and business strategies. She spent time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather and making sure they knew what an extraordinary man he had been. She traveled a bit, visiting Catherine in Santa Fe and attending one of her great-nephew's piano concerts in Denver. She lived for another 12 years after Isaac's death, years that were full of love and family and purpose. She saw the ranch continue to thrive, saw her descendants grow and succeed, saw the legacy she and Isaac had built together continue to flourish. When Zara Palmer Northwood died at the age of 80, peacefully in her sleep, she was surrounded by family. Her children and many of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren were there, and as she took her last breath, those who were present said she smiled, as if seeing something wonderful. At her funeral, Thomas stood to give the eulogy. He was 73 himself now, his own children grown with families of their own. "My mother was an extraordinary woman," he said, his voice strong despite his tears. "She went from having nothing to building an empire. She went from being a victim to being a pillar of strength for everyone around her. But what made her truly special was not what she achieved, but how she loved. She loved deeply and completely, with her whole heart. She loved my father, she loved us, her children. She loved every grandchild and great-grandchild. She taught us that kindness matters, that integrity matters, that love matters most of all." He paused, looking out at the assembled crowd. "My mother used to tell us the story of how she and my father met, how she was on her knees in the snow, begging for mercy, and how my father appeared and promised her that she would only know kindness from him. He kept that promise every day of their life together. And my mother kept her own promise, showing that same kindness to everyone she met. That is her legacy. Not the ranch, not the businesses, not the money. Her legacy is teaching all of us how to love, how to be kind, how to show mercy to those who need it most." Zara was buried next to Isaac on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. Their headstone was simple, just their names and dates, and beneath that, a single line that Thomas had chosen: "She begged for mercy." He showed her kindness. Together they built a legacy of love. The Double R Ranch continued for generations, always run by a member of the Northwood family. It became famous throughout the region not just for its success, but for its ethics, for the way it treated its workers, for the school that educated hundreds of children, for the medical clinic that served the community. People said there was something special about the ranch, some kind of magic that had been there since the beginning. But those who knew the story understood that it was not magic. It was simply the result of two people who had found each other in the darkest of times and chosen to build something beautiful together. It was the result of a cowboy who saw a woman in distress and offered mercy instead of walking away. It was the result of a woman who found the courage to accept that mercy and turn it into a lifetime of love. The snow still fell in the canyons outside Santa Fe, just as it had that day over 60 years ago when a frightened woman knelt and begged for her life. But now, when people passed through those canyons, they told the story of Isaac and Zara, the cowboy and the clerk's daughter who proved that even in the hardest times, kindness and love could transform everything. Their story became legend, passed down through generations, a reminder that mercy given freely can change the course of a life, that a single moment of compassion can ripple outward, touching countless lives in ways both seen and unseen. That love, real love, the kind built on respect and trust and daily choice, can withstand anything. And on cold winter nights, when the snow fell soft and white over New Mexico, Grandparents throughout the territory would tell their grandchildren the story of Isaac and Zara. They would tell them about a woman who begged for mercy and a cowboy who offered kindness instead. They would tell them about how, from that desperate moment in a canyon, an entire legacy of love and goodness had grown. "Remember," they would say to the children, their faces serious in the firelight, "remember that how we treat people in their darkest moments matters. Remember that mercy and kindness cost us nothing but can mean everything to someone in need. Remember that love is not just a feeling, but a choice we make every single day." And the children would listen, wide-eyed, and they would carry the story forward, passing it on to their own children and grandchildren, ensuring that Isaac and Zara's legacy of love and kindness would never be forgotten. The Double R Ranch still stands today, over a century after Isaac Northwood first brought Zara Palmer there, seeking refuge and hope. The original house is now a museum, carefully preserved, telling the story of the family that built an empire on principles of integrity and compassion. Visitors walk through the rooms where Isaac and Zara raised their children, where they laughed and cried and loved, and they feel the echo of something special, something that transcended time. In the end, that is what Isaac and Zara left behind. Not just land or buildings or money, though there was plenty of that. They left behind proof that mercy and kindness matter, that love can triumph over fear, that two people who choose each other every day can build something that lasts far beyond their own lifetimes. They left behind a story that reminds us all to be better, to choose compassion, to offer mercy when we can and gratitude when we receive it. They left behind a legacy that says our darkest moments do not define us, but how we respond to them and how we treat others in theirs. That is what truly matters. And somewhere in whatever lies beyond this life, Isaac and Zara are together still, their hands clasped, their love eternal, looking down on the beautiful legacy they created together. From that single moment in a snowy canyon, when a cowboy chose mercy over indifference and a woman chose hope over despair, an entire dynasty of love and goodness was born. That is the power of kindness. That is the power of mercy. That is the power of two people who found each other when they needed each other most, and chose to build something beautiful together. That is the story of Isaac and Zara, the cowboy who showed mercy and the woman who blossomed under his kindness, and their love story that changed not just their lives, but the lives of generations to come. And every time snow falls in the canyons outside Santa Fe, those who know the story remember. They remember that in our darkest hours, mercy can find us. They remember that kindness can transform everything. And they remember that love, real and true and lasting, is always worth fighting for, always worth believing in, always worth building a life around. That is the legacy of Isaac Northwood and Zara Palmer, two ordinary people who became extraordinary through the simple choice to love each other completely. Their story lives on, a testament to the enduring power of compassion, mercy, and love that knows no bounds.